Welcome to a brief overview of SCM, Sunrise Clinical Manager. Sunrise Clinical Manager is an electronic health record used in acute care settings in the province of Saskatchewan. It is used in a number of different locations, and in each location it is used slightly differently. To start with, we'll look at logging in. On your desktop, you will see two icons, a Citrix storefront and a Citrix manual storefront. Citrix Manual Storefront allows you to log in manually in the case that you have to log into a temporary or a different location. 99% of the time, you will use the Citrix Storefront to log you in, which should automatically fill in your username and password. Double-click on the Citrix Storefront icon. The storefront will open, and on the first time it opens, it's just a basic home page. You will need to go to the Apps tab to select the application that you wish to open. When you click on it, you will be presented with a list of application icons that you currently are approved to have access to. You're going to be looking for SCM Allscripts Gateway. If you click on the star up in the top left-hand corner, going forward when you log into the storefront, the gateway will automatically be on the home page and you won't need to select it from the apps. Single click on the gateway and patiently wait. When the login screen appears, if it doesn't automatically put in your username and password, just use the same username and password that you used to log into the computer. When the screen first opens, you may see a window that looks like this. Has the basic SCM screen but no information. On your very first login, you may be presented with a completely blank screen that looks a little bit more like this, but even this bottom part won't exist. It'll just be blank, and the only thing you'll see on there is up at the top, My Applications. If it does come up blank like that on your initial login, click on the little arrow by My Applications and select Emergency Department, and you will then be presented with a screen like this. Sometimes, if there's a sidebar that is displaying beside it, and that also allows you to select Emergency Department. An emergency department is the part of the application that we're currently using in Prince Albert. It really doesn't have anything to do with acute care or emergency department. If the sidebar is present and you do not wish to have it there, in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a little tab. You can click the arrow and the sidebar will disappear. The pieces that you see on the screen on this initial login, up at the top, there's a bar, File, Registration, View, Go To. Preferences, it's the File menu. Below that is a row of icons. Those are the main toolbar icons. A blue bar that goes across the screen, which is the patient header. This will display patient information when a patient is selected. A row of file folder tabs. The first tab being the view you are currently on. It will automatically be on the ED Status Board tab. And you can also switch to a view of patient list, and those two tabs will toggle back and forth. The rest of the tabs that are grayed out are part of the patient's chart, and if there is a patient displaying in the patient header, those tabs will all be active. Below that is the dashboard, and you have the options to select your department and that view within the department. Your first task will be to go to the department drop-down and select the department that you wish to view. You will be provided security access to the department that you hold positions in. In this case, we will select the NICU unit. Next, across from the department, you have a view drop-down. The default view is to O1 all beds. Other views available are a display board, which is information that will be shown on the TV screens that are a public view, a charge nurse view, and a lactation consultant view. Each of these views has a different selection of columns to look at. You will be given security access to the views that are pertinent to your roles. Once you select a patient on the status board, that row will highlight and that patient will display up in this blue patient header. If you want to move through different patients on the board, you can use these arrows up in the main toolbar. The information in the header is the name of the patient, their location, their primary care physician, their regional number, their visit number, and their birth date. All the tabs next to your View tab are now highlighted. I will just do a brief overview of the information you can find behind each of the tabs. The Orders tab will show any orders that have been entered into the lab or the radiology information systems. At some point in the future, SCM will use electronic order entry. At this point, the orders are not entered from the SCM side. They are entered from either the lab or radiology side and are viewable within SCM. An example of a radiology order would look something like this. The order shows it is there. Under the status, it says one or more final results received, which means the order's been completed. If the requisition had only been entered, for a radiology it would say active master order. For a lab order it would say pending. You will notice on the left-hand side there's an options panel and a number of tabs will have these available. These allow you to apply filters or preferences to your orders. The default for the chart selection is this chart, meaning that it's this registered visit that you're viewing the orders for, and the date range for orders is from the start of the chart. If we move to the Results tab, we'll notice that in the Options panel, the chart selection for results defaults to all available charts, meaning that if this patient had more than one registered visit to the hospital, all results would be viewable without having to search any farther. The date range, however, is set to display the results from 1 week ago. If you wish to look at a different set of results or a date range of results, you can click on the arrow beside the date. There's a quick pick of a number of different options you can choose, including the start of the chart or custom, where you can select specific dates on the calendar. When there are results, they will display on the screen, and it's what's called displayed in a trend view. So your options for different views are down a little lower on the options panel. Trend view is the default view when the results tab loads. For radiology results, if the radiology test has been completed and an image is available, there will be a small star beside X-ray, and the word medical will not yet display. Once the radiology report is available, the word medical will display. If you hover your mouse over the word medical, it will bring up the radiology report. It doesn't stay on the screen very long. You may also double click on the word medical, and another window will open. In this window, there's the media image up at the top and an expansion sign. The expansion symbol means that there's additional information to expand, and this is where you will also find the radiology report to review, and it won't disappear on you in 5 seconds. The media image will link you directly to PACS. So if you are needing to view the PACS image, you would just click on this media symbol. It will launch PACS within SCM. It does not require an additional login or security access to the PACS system to view the images for the patient that you are providing care for. And then it will open PACS and you'll be able to view the image. Lab values will also display on this screen. Generally, lab values display above radiology values. And if there are multiple results that you would like to plot on a graph, one of the other options for views is trend and graph. This will place a graph at the bottom of the screen, and you can select the tests off of the top trend view that you would like to plot on the graph below. It will plot the same date range as you've selected up at the top here. So if you want to plot everything on the graph from the start of the chart, that's what you would select. If you only want to plot results from the last 1 or 2 weeks, you would just change your selection for the date range of the chart view. Moving to the Patient Info tab. The Patient Info tab contains demographic information that is entered at registration. The Patient Info tab does not have an options panel. It has summary views and it defaults to the Health Issues view. Within this Health Issues view, you would find the admitting diagnosis as well as any infection control alerts that are associated with the patient. Currently in Prince Albert, the sections for alert, allergies, and comments are not set up for functional use. Care providers will provide you the admitting, attending, and family physician as it's been entered into our registration system. We also do not currently use significant events. Address, phone, and contact information is the information that's been entered at the registration desk, as well as demographics regarding the visit. If you are looking for the hospitalization number or their paper chart number, you would come to this demographic visit data, click on the small blue details letter on the side there, go to other IDs, and this is where you would find any other numbers, IDs that are associated with the patient visit. PHN being the provincial health number, VHID being their chart file at the Victoria Hospital. Visit history will give you a list of any registered visits a patient has had into the Victoria Hospital dating back as far as 2011. The Documents tab will display any chart documents that are associated with this patient. Chart selection is all available charts, and the date ranges back to the start of all charts. These documents would include the triage note on an emergency department visit, the physician's note from an emergency department visit, nursing admission databases from ICU, our surgical and medicine units, system assessments from those same units, and progress notes from our medical and surgical units as well. Currently, the NICU is not entering any documents into the patient chart in SCM. Flow sheets is vital signs and input and output, and again, these won't be used in the NICU department, but are currently used on our inpatient units for medical and surgical. The Clinical Summary tab is a tab that can be set up with a number of tiles to summarize a visit at a glance. Currently, that is not set up for the NICU and may be something that is reviewed in the future. The Visit Record Review tab is a summary of the visit. When you click on it, it loads to the visit that you're currently viewing, and it will default to the last 5 days. If you click on Show All Documentation, it will show any information that's been linked to the visit, including primary care physicians, their locations, any changes on the status board, all their lab orders, lab results, radiology orders, and radiology results, any information that pertains to the visit. It basically is a summary of all the other patient information tabs into one singular screen view. And the timeline is just if a patient has had multiple visits, it plots their visits to the hospital on the timeline, and you are able to click on it and view the visit record review for that visit. Under the visit record review, if a patient has had more than one visit, you can select different visits by the Select Visit drop-down. The EHR Viewer tab will allow you to link directly to the EHR Viewer from within SCM. The very first time you select the EHR Viewer tab, you will be presented with a window to re-authenticate. This is asking you to confirm the password you used to log into the computer with. This is a security measure to ensure that your EHR Viewer account is linked to your SCM account. Put in your computer password and select OK. And you will then be asked to put in your EHR Viewer credentials. So the same username and password that you use to log into your EHR Viewer account. If you do not already have an EHR Viewer account, you will not be able to log into SCM or into the viewer via SCM. Once you put in your EHR Viewer credentials and click OK, you will be linked to the EHR Viewer account for that specific patient that you have displaying up in the patient header. You will only need to put in the username and password for the computer and the account one time. After that, it will remember your login credentials. And as you go to different patients on your status board and click on the EHR Viewer tab, it will link you to that patient's information in the viewer. The only time you will need to re-enter those credentials is if you have to change a password for the viewer or for your network account. Returning to the Status Board tab, we'll take a quick look at the Status Board. Each status board in each department is designed specifically for those department needs, and each view within the department is set up specifically for those that have specific needs under those views. The status board itself is basically like a large Excel document or spreadsheet. It's got rows and columns. You'll notice that the column headers are a light gray. The first one, bed, has this small light triangle in it, meaning that the information is sorted out by the bed numbers. If you click in any other gray header, it will sort things out either alphabetically or numerically from high to low, depending on which one you've clicked in. If you unintentionally click in a gray header and everything is resorted on the board, you can always just return to bed and resort it back to normal. Information is generated on the status board by several different methods. Some of the information, such as the patient name, their age, and their gender, flows directly from our registration system. This also includes the most responsible physician. Any updates to the most responsible physician caring for that patient need to be communicated to the registration desk, and they will update it in their system, which in turn will update it in SCM. Other information on some units flows from documents that are entered by staff. Once information's in those documents, it flows to specific columns on the board, and some information is manually maintained on the board. When your patient is registered to the department, they will automatically show up in the bed they've been registered to. If you need to change them into or moving them into a different bed on the unit, you will need to do that manually. You would double click on the bed that they're currently in. You will be presented with a list of all the other beds on that unit, and you would just select the location that they are moving to. Once that's been completed, registration should also be notified so that both systems maintain an accurate location for the patient. The status column is a column that describes the patient's current status on the unit as well as their method of discharge. So when they are registered, I believe they show up as admitted, and that will be how their status is for most of their stay there. However, if they are going to be transferred to another unit, say from NICU or to JPCA into pediatrics or perhaps to JPCH, there are a couple different options. So if they're going to be transferred to another unit in the hospital, the status would be updated to a waiting unit transfer. If they're going to be transferred outside of the facility, they would be updated to a pending transfer, which just shows up as a TX on the screen after you've selected it. If they are ready for discharge today, they are set as a pending discharge. And these are just communication schools tools so that at a glance you're able to see what the current state or plan for the patient is. Once the patient leaves the unit, we need to be able to discharge them from the status board. And those are what we call disposition statuses. So they can be discharged home, transferred to JPCH NICU, or a unit transfer. And in those cases, if you click one of those discharge statuses, you will get a question that says, is this the patient you intend to remove from this view? Double check that information, and if that's the case, you're going to say, okay, yes. That patient will then be removed from the status board, and the board will be flagged for housekeeping. If that patient doesn't end up leaving or you accidentally discharge the incorrect patient, you can always go to your views, select inactive patients, and you will find the patient that you had just removed from the board located in the inactive patient view. To final discharge a patient, it also requires a connection with the registration system. So until the registration system discharges the patient in their system, this patient will remain on the inactive patient view, and you have the option to return them to the board. Highlight the patient, right-click, and return the patient. The last known location will show in the screen. OK. Then we'll return to our board view, and the patient is back in the board. And we can then set their status back to admitted. There are some icons here that are alerts as well. In Prince Albert, they use this little small Lego head, I call it, icon to indicate the patient's under the age of 6. And this little blue two-person icon indicates a name alert, so that there's another name that is similar to that one as well. You'll notice when the patient left the room automatically flagged for housekeeping. Once the room has been cleaned and is ready again for service, you would double click on the word housekeeping and select ready. A couple other the options available there are out of service, reserved, or occupied, and that's the case in the case where a patient is located in the room prior to the registration system entering them into the system. The name alert is a checkbox, and that is selected when you want to display this icon for name alert, where there's a potential for two names that are very closely or look very similar in nature, and we want people to be aware. Many of the other columns are manually generated, and there will be guides for each individual unit that will identify how those columns and who is expected to maintain those columns. When you scroll through the columns, you'll notice that who your patient is and the bed they're located in as you scroll farther down is information that is lost and can be difficult then to know who you're referencing on the board. If you right-click in the column that you wish to keep viewable on your screen as you scroll through the board, you have the option to lock the columns. Once the columns are locked, then when I scroll forward through the rest of the columns, it will hold those floating on top of the column. And that is it for a brief overview of SCM. If you have any questions, you can reach out to your manager or educator or to myself, Brenda Brake, at brenda.brake@saskhealthauthority.ca. Thank you.